You will not believe this, but Blizzard are saying that support is absolutely beautifully balanced in Overwatch 2. Is that true? Well, let's take a look at this developer update from Aaron Keller. Oh, yes. Okay, let's do this. So, directors take a balance in heroes and matchmaking. A few weeks ago, we published the first in a series of updates on the game. It's crazy how much has been happening since then. We launched Season 3, announced a collab with One Punch Man, and I'm now dating Genji. I feel so lucky. I wanted to dive into two topics today: Season 3 balance and the matchmaker. We feel that the start of Season 3 is in a much better state of balance than the start of Season 2. We hear from players that balance is the best it's been since the launch of Overwatch 2. While the game feels fresh based on all of the changes made, it's been great watching that discussion, and to foster it, I'd like to give a bit more details and a bit less commentary. Okay, that's good stuff. So to begin with, we're going to talk about support. So let's do it, right? Let's see what he says about support. Let's look at the support role first. On the positive side, most supports are viable in nearly every skill tier. Brigitte has really popped this season and has the highest win rate for nearly all skill tiers except for top 500, where Zen takes the lead, with both averaging out at a nearly 55% win rate. Now, I think that's really interesting there because Brig, I've had Brig down as a bit of a sleeper support pick for a while, and I think like Brig is very, very strong right now in the game. Of course, when you start seeing more ball getting used, especially on the enemy tank, Brig is really good against ball because she just doesn't die to ball, and also Brig can keep the target of ball's diving attempts alive. So if ball tries to go in on someone in your back line, Brig can just throw repair packs at them, and it's like, oh well, go away ball, you're never going to kill him, which you never will, which is really good. But besides that, Brig is just really tanky herself. She doesn't die. She's great for keeping the other support alive as well. And I think she's very good, like, reactionary Brig. And so she can prevent people from dying in those split-second decisions, like, bang, healing over there, provided she keeps Inspire active as well. She's got even more healing coming out. When she's got Whip Shot, she can knock targets away. Of course, she can use her own barriers to prevent more damage coming into herself and to keep other players on her team alive as well. I think she's just really, really good. But I do also agree with that first line there that, you know what, I think supports are, all of them are basically viable. Like, I don't think I've been in games this season where I've been like, oh no, look at my support line, it's trash, we can't make this work. Even if it's like, let's say a less optimal support line of like a Lucio Moira, for example, and maybe the Moira is focusing on damage more than healing, then yeah, maybe it's a little bit problematic. I guess maybe not Lucio Moira, maybe like Lucio Zen can be a bit of a problem. But then again, if Zen is popping off, it's just disgusting. Anyway, let's carry on and see what Aaron keeps saying. On the other end of the spectrum are Kiriko and Moira at around 45%. This goes to show that heroes with the highest win rates aren't always the heroes that are played the most. When we look at who is actually being played, the top supports are Ana, Kiriko and Mercy for nearly all skill tiers until Silver and Bronze, where Moira becomes picked quite a bit. It's counterintuitive that Kiriko has such a high pick rate at the highest levels of play but such a low win rate, and Brigitte has such a high win rate but a mediocre play rate. While it would be fun to pick on this group, we tend to think that highly skilled players are continuing to pick certain heroes for good reasons, and we're getting additional metrics from maps, team comps and team fights to try and understand this. If it's fruitful, expect to hear more about it. Now, that is really interesting, that is there. So Brig isn't really being picked a lot, but when she is, she's winning games. Now, this, if any of you support players out there are watching this video, pick Brig, because if Brig is winning a lot of games comparatively to how many matches she's actually in, then give her a go. You know, I think you're gonna get really good results playing Brig. Also, I don't think it's much of a stretch of the imagination to understand that Moira is very powerful in Bronze and Silver, because obviously Moira is, how can I say this diplomatically? It's easy to get quite a bit of value out of Moira, and also she is quite forgivable with her fade. You can get out of bad situations quite easily, and you can probably duel a lot of the DPS at that rank because they probably can't aim. So you're a support, but also you're killing the DPS, so it probably feels super powerful to play her at that level. Moving forward to top 500 and stuff, which is something that doesn't really apply to most of the player base. Of course, it's top 500. You know, like it's literally the top 0.1% of players. But it is still interesting to focus on those players and look at what supports are doing well at that level, because then over time, So, well, I guess I can't say this is a blanket statement, but sometimes that filters down to the rest of the player base. Now, Zen is the takeaway here. So Zen is getting a massively high win rate in top 500. This is because top 500 Zen players are killers. You know, they're doing tons of damage. They've got Discord on the right targets at all times. They're just absolutely pumping out the damage. So in a way, they're kind of like this DPS artillery platform that's also a support, but they've got cracked aim. That's the thing to take away from that. Whereas lower ranked Zens are going to miss a lot of shots, not going to be as effective as maybe other supports that actually supporting the team. Now, the other thing here is sort of the Ana, Kiriko, and Mercy. Now, they are the most played supports. Now, doesn't mean that they're winning the most games, but they are the most played supports. And I think when you look at supports in a vacuum, and I'm still going to... I don't think the comments that Aaron have made here kind of changed my mindset on this. But when I look at them, I look at Kiriko, and I think she can do a lot. And so she's highly valuable. So a good Kiriko player is going to be able to just do tons of stuff in a game. Also, same for Ana, right? Very varied kit, a high skill kit, a kit that can just pop off. There's a lot of moments with that kit where you can get great sleep dart off, you can enable with your ultimate. Same for Kiriko as well. And of course, Mercy. Now, the Mercy stuff is interesting because Mercy, while she was, like, there is a debate running, right? Was Mercy nerfed at the start of this season? Was she buffed at the start of this season? Now, my point of view was it was a nerf, but not to her actual viability. It was a nerf to her, like, a fluidity, the way she played. She's more clunky now, but actually she gained more healing because she's got that burst healing now when targets are below 50% health. So Mercy, it seems, is a big winner from this, but for Mercy players, it's taken some time to adjust to this, but probably we're getting over that adjustment period now. A few weeks have gone by, so it's probably okay now. It's all gravy. Like, Mercy's got extra healing, everyone's loving it. So yeah, really interesting stuff on supports there. But honestly, I do agree. I do think support is in a really good place right now. And I don't really look at my support line and go, oh, we're going to lose this game because we've got this and that support. I just think, okay, so we've got an Ana and we've got a Kiriko. So if I'm playing Reinhardt, I can just be more stupid and just go deep into the enemy team because I know I'm going to get loads of burst healing. And also I've got Suzu and Grenade to bail me out. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of the way I view support. Anyway, but good stuff there. Good news. So next up, he goes on to talk about tanks, and this is what he says. Tanks are in a great spot right now. It's almost hard to pick a bad tank. At the top end, Reinhardt has the highest win rate of tanks for most tiers, reaching about 58% in bronze through platinum. At masters and above, Sigma edges him out and sits at 55% in top 500. Now, I want to just jump on this for a second because when Reinhardt is... I'm just going to say this. When Reinhardt is meta, the game is better. Just repeat that after me. Rein meta, game better. All the time. Literally, this guy is... I love playing Reinhardt. He is the quintessential Overwatch tank. He's amazing. I love it. It's great. Like, having that front line, it's just awesome. It creates loads of space for other players to play. I think it's just fantastic when Reinhardt is meta. And I love Rein versus Rein as a tank. That is like real. It's super fun. That is trying to block the shatters, like going for like massive tank diffs, trying to, like, you know, get the clutch charges off, interrupting their charges, getting the 5-strike hits, dodging theirs, building your ultimate faster, going for the shatter. I love it. It's so good. What is interesting though is that at the highest top 500, Sigma actually is a little bit better than Reinhardt, and I think that's worth kind of touching on a bit. And again, you can come back to this whole thing of Sigma does a lot, really. Sigma is a more modern tank than Reinhardt, but he does a lot. Like, Rein needs to get in there at close range and start swinging his hammer. Yes, he can use his barrier. Yes, he can close distance easier with his charge, especially now that you can control it easier, and also you can cancel it, because, of course, in Overwatch 1, you couldn't do that. And, of course, you've got 2 5-strikes, and the 5-strikes do more damage. That was a recent buff that he got. But Sigma, he's got his barrier that he can deploy at range. He's got his sort of medium to short range primary fire, which is AoE, which is very good for pushing people away. It's very good for doing tons of damage as well. He's got his suck, which again is a really good reactionary ability, so he can take high spikes of damage. He's a bit more like in control of his own destiny, where Reinhardt kind of needs his supports to look after him. You know, with Sigma, you can be a bit more like, whoa. And Sigma's ult, again, is a very powerful ultimate. And also Rock is great because you can just interrupt loads of people with it. Obviously, it's everyone's favorite, throwing it at Genji and all of that stuff. So, yeah, I think that's really interesting stuff. But again, I completely agree with that statement. I think tanks are all fine. Like, when I'm playing tanks, most of my playtime has gone on Reinhardt just because I like the playstyle. But also, I've played Orisa, I've played Sigma, I've played... to be fair, I haven't played much Zarya this season. I probably would put Zarya maybe as... and Junker Queen and Roadhog sort of lower down the list. Anyway, let's carry on and see what Aaron says, because he's probably got statistics about this. So he goes on to say, at Masters and above, Sigma... Oh, I read that, didn't I? But I'll read it again. Sigma edges Reinhardt out at 55% in top 500. Hog is struggling a bit. Even though there are situations where he can be successful, Winston and Zarya can perform well at certain ranks, and the rest of the roster is solid across all skill tiers. Now, actually, I want to talk about this. So, Winston, I mean, so the way I'm picking tanks is map specific. If I'm on Numbani, I'm absolutely playing Winston on Numbani all the time, because that first point defense with Winston, it's beautiful. Like, I love that as Winston. So I'm going to pick Winston. I'm not going to play Ryan there. You can play Ryan there, obviously. Obviously, as you go through to the second point in the map, I might come off the Winston, might go to a Reinhardt or a Sigma, or even like an Orisa or whatever. But yeah, I think that's interesting. So tank picks can be kind of map specific, which I don't mind. You know, I really don't mind maps sort of favoring one tank over the other, because I think that adds another layer to the game, and I think that's pretty good. But yeah, I think the comments here, like, obviously Hog is struggling a bit. I'm not seeing much Hog in the game, although Hog can be fairly okay against Sigma. But yeah, he doesn't really bring much else to the table, so he can kind of struggle when it comes to actually being a tank. And I think Zarya is, I don't know, like, I just don't think I've got enough playtime to really talk about Zarya. I think she'll be fine. Like, I don't know, like on control point maps, Zarya is probably going to be okay if you start getting into a brawl, getting a ton of damage. Again, it might be what the enemy team are playing against you. If they've got like a Junkrat, you can go for the easy shield charge, farm off that, even a Pharah in some cases, although I probably would play something a bit different, like maybe even like a Diva or an Orisa into the Pharah, just so I can do something to push her away, or even a Sigma can be decent. Anyway, let's go on to see what he says about Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball is probably the biggest tank topic in the community right now, with takes varying. Some think he's overpowered, others feel that he's in a good spot, and still others think both. It's a flip-flop, back and forth. His win rate is among the top 3 to 4 tanks at most tiers and bounces between 51 and 55%. His pick rate is lower in the metal ranks, increasing as player skill rises. By top 500, he is far and away the most picked tank. We think that this has enabled other heroes to stand out in the current meta, along with Wrecking Ball, but we are keeping an eye on him and want to make sure that players don't get fatigued by seeing too much of the little guy. Now, again, this is quite good info, because if you think of Wrecking Ball, he is like very hard to get that sort of baseline value with, whereas with a Reinhardt, everyone can walk forward with a shield deployed, right? That's not really something you need to learn. With Ball, though, it's very different, like completely different. It's difficult, and it's completely different. You need to know how to grapple, you need to know what targets to try and isolate, you need to know all kinds of crazy tech, like ledge slams and everything with Ball. Once you start learning that, you then become a lot more effective. Now, obviously, at the higher end of play, players learn those techs, learn those skills with the heroes, and become more effective. So I don't think it's any surprise that we're seeing Ball extremely powerful at the highest level of play. The big question is he OP? Now, he's a lot better than he used to be. The fact he's got shields now is mega powerful for him, because he can regenerate them, and obviously it makes him more tankier. Like, Ball can almost just go in, engage, and get out. Go in, engage, and get out. Now, when I was playing DPS against Ball, and I think there's video footage of this on the channel, I tend to play Torb against Ball, just because the turret is quite annoying for him to deal with, and also it's really hard for Ball to kill Torb, because if you just pop bloody whatever, I always forget what it's, I always want to call it Molten Core, because that's what it used to be back in the day. What is it called, that Torb? But anyway, I pop that ability, E, I press E on my keyboard, and then I just start blasting him with alternate fire, because it just does tons of damage to him. He won't kill you, he'll have to roll away. But anyway, that's all besides the point. The thing with Ball is high skill, very high skill ceiling, and that translates into a lot of higher skill players using him. Is he OP, though? I don't know. I think you just kind of need to focus on Ball. It's one of those things where if Ball's on the enemy team, you need to be aware he's going to be in your back line, probably. So then you need to adapt the way your team plays, right? If you've got a Brig and maybe you've got an Ana, then your Brig needs to sort of look after your Ana a little bit. Maybe even one of your DPS tries to take out the Ball if you've got like a Reaper, or you've got a Torbjorn, as I say. Or even if your tank goes back and tries to protect them. I mean, I've had some success as a Reinhardt against the Ball, like just going for counter charges when he slams and things like that. You don't always kill him because he's got a lot of health, but you can do enough to push him away. So I don't really know what to say about Ball. In some ways he is OP, in other ways he isn't, but I just think Ball is, you can deal with him, right? It's not, like, here's the thing, right? I don't think it's like when Roadhog was OP, because Roadhog would hook you and you would die. There was no way of getting out of this. You were hooked in and killed. Ball, though, can slam you and you're not dead. Like, he still has to do quite a bit to kill you or need to follow up from his team. He's not just slamming you and then you're dead. You know, he ain't slamming you, then going into his primary fire and killing you. He's slamming you, shooting you, rolling about a bit, shooting you, right, and then you die. There's a lot of time there to react. There's counterplay opportunity. So I think that's why in my head, I don't really see him as OP. But beyond no illusion, he is very powerful at the moment. Then he goes on to talk about DPS heroes. So this is going to be quite interesting as well. So this is what he says. There have been some big swings in the damage roll. There are two stories here. From a numbers perspective, DPS feels fairly balanced across the board, and Season 3 has been called the Season of Hit Scan by many of you, or possibly the Season of Cassidy. Changes to Sojourn, as well as buffs to a few other characters, have opened a new set of heroes to play. Cassidy, Pharah, Widowmaker, and Tracer have all risen in playtime. In fact, Cassidy is the most picked hero by a huge margin across all ranks except for top 500, where he's tied with Tracer, and he continues to move up. Around 30% of matches have a Cassidy on both sides. Besides Symmetra, it's hard to talk about the most powerful heroes for DPS at middle to higher ranks. The band that most damage heroes fall within is between 47 to 53% win rate. Pharah, Widow, Tracer, and Sim hover around the top, but things shift around almost daily. At low ranks, the top heroes by win rate are Symmetra and Torbjorn. It's always Symmetra and Torbjorn. In fact, Symmetra typically has the highest win rate in the game for all roles at all ranks except Masters and above. Sombra, at the low end of power, did have significant lift this season and has a win rate of around 46% at Diamond and above. Right then. I quite like this because this is telling you that everyone's playing Cassidy, and I think everyone is playing Cassidy. I'm playing Cassidy. Everybody's playing Cassidy. Cassidy got a massive buff, let's be honest. The increase, or whatever way you want to look at this, I always get confused with this, don't I? But basically, I want to say the increase of his damage fall-off range, but he just does more, I guess it's the decrease of it. Whatever. He does more damage at range now. That's the easy way of getting around that, which makes him more powerful because he doesn't need to be as close to get as much damage, basically, which is great. So you can do those sort of longer range engagements that typically you'd be, I don't know, more comfortable doing with an Ashe. He's still not as good as Ashe at that range, but, you know, you can still feather those shots in and still get some quite cheeky kills at range with Cassidy now. Also, his Magnetic Grenade is a very powerful ability, and he's being nerfed. We know that. Blizzard have already come out and said they're going to look at nerfing that, and they actively are looking at changes to that at the moment, which is good news because it is it's crap to use. As someone who plays Cassidy, the grenade is crap to use, but also it's effective, so you just keep using it. And it feels crap when you see like a Lucio connected with a grenade, and you know the poor lad's going to die, and he just goes off around the corner and dies in silence, quiet, away from everyone else. He's found a quiet space and exploded. It is quite sad. And so, yeah, they are changing that. But he has become very strong. I think also the thing about Tracer being sort of more played at the higher tiers, again, it's kind of, I don't want to say that's always happened in Overwatch's history, but Tracer, again, is one of those heroes with a very high skill ceiling. So you do tend to get the very high skill players picking up that hero just because she is a flashy hero to play. And yeah, she is effective. In 5v5, she's more effective than she ever was in 6v6. So, you know, there's no shock there. But I think when we look at Pharah and Widowmaker, and especially with Pharah having a high win rate, I think Pharah might be a bit OP at the moment, to be honest. She's very hard to kill. Like, you would think with all of the hit scan buffs that we've got, the buffs to Soldier, the buffs to Cassidy, and even just Ashe being good, and even Widowmaker, you think Pharah would be able to just be destroyed. Although, like, I've been in a number of games where we've played, like, double hit scan into Pharah Mercy and just been destroyed. Like, we literally have got no way of killing them. So, I don't know. Like, maybe that's just us being bad. I'm not sure. It could also be because Pharah's not in every game that she's kind of got a high win rate because she's being played into maybe team comps that actually can't deal with her. You know, because if you're playing into, like, a Genji Tracer and you're Pharah Mercy, well, what are they going to do to stop you? You know, unless they make changes to that DPS lineup, they're not really going to be able to do anything to you, so you can just farm them away over and over again. So maybe there's a lot of that going on. Also, it is interesting about Symmetra being like the highest win rate hero in every rank apart from Masters, because again, it's probably for the same reasons. It's different when you get a sim. It's like, oh my, how do we deal with the sim? We need to play totally different to the way we usually play against most of the other DPS heroes, so it can be quite abrasive to play against. And I guess Torb is the same in some ways. So I think this is all kind of interesting stuff here. Obviously with Sombra as well being at the lower end of power, and she's only got like a 46% win rate at Diamond and above. I mean, I think that's a given because there's just better heroes to pick than Sombra, and I think she still probably needs a bit of a buff. But yeah, I think that's all right for DPS, and I'd like to see what you guys think in the comments below. Oh, actually, about Widow as well. I didn't really touch on Widow. I think Widow kind of falls into that category for me as the Winston, where she's very map specific. Like, I would play Widow on Casino Royale, and I would play her on Junkertown, and maybe Numbani if I'm feeling spicy on the first point, just to try and get a pick and get a kill. But beyond that, I generally don't play Widow. But on those maps, she is mega strong, especially Junkertown and Casino Royale. She is just absolutely borderline OP because the sight lines are so long. You can only really kill her with a Widow. You basically need a Widow to deal with her. And in some of the games that I've been playing where there's been like a smattering of like GM and high master level players, if you're playing into a Widow and you don't have a Widow, you just are you're wrecked basically. You need to just break line of sight to the Widow all the time, which means you give loads of space to the enemy team, and they basically cap first point Junkertown for free. So yeah, but that's always going to be an issue because of the way Widowmaker is designed. Aaron then goes on to say, with the current state of the game, we're not looking at doing balance changes until our mid-season patch. So hopefully mid-season we'll just see changes to Cassidy's magnetic grenade, probably some sort of tuning to Ball as well, maybe make him a little bit weaker, although I still think Ball is like whatever, you can kind of play around him. And beyond that, we'll have to wait and see what they do. Okay, now he goes on to talk about the Matchmaker and MMR. So this is going to be really interesting. I'm going to read this whole section off. It's quite a big section, and then we'll give some thoughts on it after we go through it. So let's do this. We made some big changes to the Matchmaker this season. The primary goal was to optimize pairing of players to minimize the MMR difference within a specific role. For example, when making matches, we put more emphasis on the DPS players on each team being closer in skill than we do for the DPS players on one team being evenly matched. With tank players on the other team, this has worked, and matches have a much tighter skill delta between players of the same role. There have been some other positive effects to these changes. In ranked, queue times have dropped, and for high skill matches, they've dropped significantly. Average match quality has also risen across the board. Also, matches with longer queue times are typically of a higher quality now than they were previously. Previously, the longer a player waited, the looser our restrictions on the skill difference could potentially be. This is still true, but that range should be more condensed. However, there have been some downsides to these changes, some of them unforeseen. Queue times have risen in Unranked a bit, and for groups with large skill differentials, they've risen quite a bit. We've made changes here, and queue times for Unranked are already moving lower. We've also heard from our players that they are experiencing large win-loss streaks in game. To be clear, we don't try to cause or prevent streaks based on an ideal win rate for players. We're studying these reports and will share more information when we get it. The issue we're hearing most from our players is encountering people from vastly different skill levels in their ranked games. Prior to Season 3, the worst 5% of Grandmaster level matches would have players 7 divisions apart, the equivalent of Gold 3 to Silver 5. When we initially shipped 2.3, this leaped to 12 divisions apart or greater. We have made numerous changes since then and are making changes almost daily. This has now been reduced to 9 divisions. We have additional changes planned for the mid-season patch that should improve this further. Okay, that's it. Talk to you soon and see you in game. Now, okay, so my biggest complaint with competitive at the moment pretty much is that, you will go into a game and there will be a large skill difference in players on the same team. Now, like Aaron is saying, it's the same for the other team as well. But this, when you get to the upper echelons of competitive, if you do have like a GM DPS player and the enemy team maybe don't, maybe they've got a GM tank instead, there might be a problem there. You could even see the tank dominating. I've been in games where I felt like the tank I'm playing against is not of my level and I'm really dominating them, and it's a bit too easy. Obviously, you can't see what the ranks most people are because their profile will be hidden, so you don't know for sure. But I think what has happened, and kind of like a positive takeaway from this, is maybe games are not becoming as sort of you're going into a game and getting rolled and then you go into a game and get rolled again. I have kind of seen, I don't know, maybe this is just anecdotal evidence, but I've seen more games, or I've been in more games that have felt more, closely matched. Like, it doesn't seem like it's a complete whitewash in one way or the other. So I don't know. But again, it is completely valid. I've seen a lot of people moaning about this, like, look, I've got a gold player in my team, but we're in master. Like, what is going on here? Like, how can that possibly be the case? And stuff like that happening. So I don't know. Like, I think competitive is just going to be something that hopefully gets better over time. And like Aaron alluded to there, they are going to make changes in the mid-season patch, which hopefully will make it a little bit better. But I've got to say, right now, I guess in conclusion, I am not really... Competitive has got really fast queue times. This is at the cost of match quality and balanced sort of matches. But the way they're balancing the matches is it's not like a load of plats versus a load of GMs. It's like plats and GMs all mixed together, playing together, and then the game actually doesn't feel as sort of, you know, rolly, although obviously it's clear sometimes and you've got a much better player on your team, or the enemy have got a much better player, especially if it's in a role like tank, because there's only one tank, so it generally sticks out a bit more. But I think beyond that, like in terms of meta, in terms of balance, in terms of heroes that you can play, in terms of, dare I say it, the fun factor of comp, I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying it. So I don't know. I think things seem like they're getting better. I guess that's what I'm sort of getting at. All right, guys, thank you for listening and watching the video. Do leave a comment below as to what you think about the current state of the game, especially on everything we've covered in this video. It's quite a long video, but I think there's a lot to go over here. And I love these developer updates from Aaron because they give us a lot more like critical information that we can then start forming opinions on, which I think is really great. All right, guys, thank you. I will catch you lovely lot on the next video. See you soon.